Okay, here we go. Sarah Bishop, chapter 1. Let's share. Then I have to find the book. Okay, here we go. The trial. Captain Cunningham was a large man with a round pink face. He wore a white wig. Some of the powder had fallen onto his shoulders. He smiled a cold smile and asked me where I was living when the fire started. At an inn, I said, near Whitehall Slip. The fire, as you well know, started at Whitehall Slip. I don't know where it started, sir. He took my chin in his hand. I drew away, but he caught my arm. You set the fire, he said. Did you not? Tell the truth, or it will go hard with you. He wore gold rings with colored stones. The lace on his shirt front gave off a sweet odor. His hands looked pudgy, but they were strong. My arm hurt where he grasped it. Tell the truth. I shook my head. No, I said, no. I'm sending you back to Lambert Prison, he said. You'll be held there until you appear for trial tomorrow. And may I remind you that I have 3 witnesses, 3 women who will testify that they saw you running about with a knife in your hand. And here we go. It's to Elizabeth, the author's foreword. This story is based upon the life of Sarah Bishop. Sarah was born in Midhurst, West Sussex, England. She came to the colony shortly before the American Revolution and with her family settled on Long Island. After the battle for Brooklyn Heights and while New York City was still burning, she fled into the wilderness of the northern Westchester County. There she lived on Long Pond, known to the Indians as Wakabuck. Captain Cunningham, British provost, who starved the living and fed the dead, and who played an important part in Sarah's life, was tried in England after the war on charges of forgery, convicted and sent to the gallows. The gallows means sent to hang. Someone was shooting, chapter 1, someone was shooting from far away, somewhere around Purdy's Mill. You would hear a whanging sound, then the bullets going overhead close. I never saw any of them, but they sounded big and mean. Father said the bullets were made in England. How he could tell they were made in England, I didn't ask. I never asked questions concerning something that he was sure about. Besides, I was too scared to do much talking. We were standing in our meadow toward dark. The meadow was planted to clover and wandered along on both sides of a clear running brook that wound down through an opening in the hills and into Wallabout Bay. There was a breeze blowing, and it made the clover look like waves on blue water. One man's doing the shooting, my father said. It's Quorm, Jim Quorm. He's Purdy's new mill hand. He's crazy about muskets. He got one of them yesterday. I was down at the tavern when the post came. It was in a muslin bag, tied up fancy. He opened it right before all of us so everybody could see. Then the bag was a brand new firelock, or in the bag was a brand new firelock and a big box of bullets marked Salvage, England. That's how I know where the bullets come from. Why is Quorm shooting at us? I asked. He's not shooting at us, my father said. He's shooting in our direction, just to remind us of what? That he owns a new firelock, that he's for the revolution, that he's hot to run King George and all his men clean out of the country, and that he knows we are against the revolution and for King George. Another bullet went over, no closer than the others, but it seemed closer. I thought it would be a good idea if we got ourselves in the house until Quorum was through shooting, but my father didn't move. He was a tall man with a gaunt face and a long, stubborn chin, which he rubbed when he was thinking hard. He stood there rubbing his chin until the shooting stopped. Then he went off to the house without saying a word. I gathered up the clover I had cut and fed the 2 cows and milked one of them, Talitha. The other cow, Tabitha, my brother would milk when he got home from his work at the Lion and Lamb. They were beautiful Gloucesters, mahogany covered with white blazes. The last of the sun was shining level, yellow as butter, over the meadow, over the row of apple trees that someone had planted a long time ago. The trees, mostly Roxbury russets, were heavy with fruit. Father counted on taking all of it to market, except for a few barrels to store for winter, and those I would make butter from. I wasn't much of a pie maker, nor much of a sauce maker either. My mother had taught me something about cooking long before she died, but I still wasn't very good at it, if you asked my brother Chad. The day was steaming hot, even for August. Even the breeze from the sea was hot. So I started the fire in the firebox outside where it was cooler than inside the house and mixed up some cakes using the fish Chad had caught, red-eared corn we had raised, and the fresh milk. Father came in when he couldn't see to work any longer. Chad was late from the tavern. Father was worried. He's been coming late this last week. The tavern's full, Chad says, running over with travelers from everywhere. Mostly from Boston, Father said. They ran Admiral Howe out of the city clean up to the Halifax, but some of the wiser ones figured that he'll return one of these days soon, this time with a whole British Navy in back of him, and make mincemeat out of all the so-called patriots. Father was bitter about the rebellion. He talked a lot about it and brooded over it when he wasn't talking. We had a drawing of King George with his crown on and a long jeweled robe. It hung on the wall above my father's bed, and every morning and evening he would stand up stiff in front of the picture and raise his hand and salute like a soldier, although he had never been one in his life, nor ever planned to be. That was up to 3 weeks ago, before the picture disappeared. Father blamed Chad for taking it down. When Chad said he hadn't and swore on the Bible, Father still didn't believe him. They didn't speak to each other for a whole day. Then my brother finally admitted that he had put the picture of King George in the fire. I've been learning things up at that tavern, Chad said. For one thing, it's a good idea to keep your mouth shut about the feelings you have. A man should do what he wants in his own home, Father said. Hang a picture of the devil on the wall if he wants to. If one of the patriots happened to walk in here and see a picture of King George sitting up there on the wall, it'd be all over the countryside by next day noon. Also, a man should stand up for what he thinks, not mince around. That's what old man Summers over in the Hempstead tried to do. He called John Adams a windbag. The Patriot boys heard about it and went over and burned his pigsty. They told him that unless he minded his ways, they'd come back and burn his barn. Father gave Chad a sharp look. You're not getting scared? You're not charging over, are you? I'm not going to wake up one morning to find you've joined the Skinners. The Skinners were gangs of young men who went around burning people's property and wanted to hang King George from the nearest tree. I knew that Chad had several friends who belonged to the Skinners. Likewise, that he was not so strong against the rebellion as Father was. In fact, he had told me once that he didn't believe in being taxed by a king who lived thousands of miles away. I put the fish cakes on the trestle with a bowl of tomato sauce and lit the lamp. Father sat down and said grace. Then he said to Chad, "You're sure you're just being cautious, not changing your mind about the war?" Chad put a whole fish cake in his mouth and was silent. The lamplight shone on his face, high cheekboned like mine, with a few freckles on both sides of his nose. I had the freckles too, but they looked better on Chad than they did on me. Father said, and I think he was right, people always took us for brother and sister, though Chad's hair was black and mine was blonde. No, just being sensible, Chad said, talking around the fish cake. I'm trying to keep out of trouble with the Skinners and the rest of the patriots. It was quiet for a while. Then from the direction of Purdy's mill came a bang, and after a moment, a whistling sound like a long sigh passed over the house. Chad got up and turned out the lamp, and we sat in the dark. End of chapter 1.